Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
Name the dog in the animal.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints?
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hey, welcome to whatever show we're talking about.
That needs to go in the bloopers.
Nice.
Starro is taking control of people around the globe, including Batman and Superman, planning on world domination. Jonathan Kent and Damian Wayne must team up against their fathers to ultimately stop Starro. That is Batman and Superman, Battle of the Super Sons. And this is the Comic Book Kaiju Podcast, a comic book discussion show. I am your host, Trent Justin Vactor. And joining me today are a couple of guys, a couple of beers, and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia. Mr. Tim Gannon and Frank Ramblings, welcome to the Comic Book Kaiju. Tim, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back. I mean, I wasn't sure that was going to be allowed, but, we had too much fun last time.
You have a permanent seat at the Comic Book Kaiju, and first time joining us also has a permanent seat. Frank Ramblings, I would say you are tied with Dane from KC as my biggest Superman loving friend of all time. And Tim's right there too. But Tim and I hosted a Batman podcast way back in the day. So I'm going to put, and Tim's wearing a Batman shirt. So we're going to put Tim as my top Batman friend. We're going to put Frank and Dane as our top Superman friend. So Frank, thank you for joining us for the very first time on the Comic Book Kaiju, sir. Thank you.
I am so happy to be here. I loved watching you guys record together a few months back, and we got to talk Star Trek a few months back on Technological. So I am just so happy we could all three of us get together and do this.
I love this, that we are finally joining each other for this podcast. Many years in the making. We've all been friends. We've all been on each other's podcasts. Like Frank said, he was on our Star Trek podcast, Technological. Frank and I did a tech podcast way back in the day, Tech Ramblings.
I forgot about Tech Ramblings.
Yeah.
Oh, bring that back. Bring that back. I want to hear your views now in your how much has happened in the tech world. Catch up.
So much has happened.
Start from where you ended and just
You know what's funny? Yeah, I wonder what our last episode was, because we didn't have like an official last episode. I don't think.
I don't think we did.
Was it the iPhone 4? What was the last thing that we left off on? I wonder.
Gosh, it would have been around that time.
That would be an interesting archival.
Yeah, I got to see if I can. I got to see if I can find those.
Yeah.
I think I've still got them somewhere on a hard drive.
And Tim and Frank are both, I should say, at the top of the show from the Beer with Geeks podcast, which is one of my favorite episodes, or which I say my favorite podcast to listen to every week. And also, if you are a Smallville fan, I would say you are a wonderful person, but you have to listen to Frank's Save Me podcast, which is, this is no joke. If I didn't know Frank, I would say this also, the best podcast I've ever listened to in my life, the most well-polished product I have ever seen. And it's fantastic that I know Frank. I know the guy behind it. It's amazing. So you have to listen to Save Me, a Smallville podcast. It belongs up there with the archival stuff that they've got on all the Blu-rays, all the DVDs. This podcast is the best thing you'll ever see for Smallville. So 100%. And I think I heard Tim's voice on an episode narrating at one point.
It was on
episode
1, 2?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. For sure.
Like I second what he's saying. It's an excellent, it's a really well-produced show. And not to say that our other Thought Bubble audio shows aren't well produced or Vactors or anything like that, but that's real professional quality. And it's excellent. And as we discussed this, I just remembered that I was supposed to help you with something on that podcast. Totally forgot this moment right now.
Well,
so
right after this podcast, go do that. But listener and viewer, if you're watching on YouTube, head over to thoughtbubbleaudio.com for all of Tim and Frank's wonderful podcasts. You can check them out right there. But the reason I wanted to have them on, like I said, these are my two biggest Batman and Superman friends of all time. So I had to have you guys on to talk Batman and Superman, Battle of the Super Sons, the latest DC animated film. And did you know the very first fully CGI animated film, Battle of the Super Sons? So that's why my friends are here. So I think, like I said, we don't even need to go into your history or your background. You two are the biggest Batman and Superman fans I know. So since Frank is here for the very first time, let's ask for Frank's opinion overall on Battle of the Super Sons. What'd you think?
It was so fun. I had such a fun time watching it. I don't watch every single one of the animated films that come out of Warner Brothers Animation. Tim, I think you're much more on it than I am. But I do dip in for ones that are particularly highly acclaimed or highly recommended to me. And I am so happy that I spent time with this one. It was so much fun. I thought the animation was beautiful. I thought the story was a lot of fun. It was, I really, really enjoyed the heck out of it, and we can get into why.
Yes. And Tim, Mr. Gannon, the Gannon man himself, what did you think of Battle of the Super Sons?
I loved it. I just something in my throat. I think it's a Starro coming out. Not too positive, but if it appears at any point in the show, just let me know. And so no, I loved it. Like Frank said, I do watch all of the shows. And so all the shows, all the movies, yes. And some of them are diminishing quality. Some of them are not great, and others are wonderful. And truly, this is definitely one of the best ones they've put out in several years. Like from start to finish, I was like, this is an absolute love, a joy. The characterization is spot on. The animation is beautiful. It's a compelling story. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And I loved it. And to me, it strengthened my belief into why Jonathan Kent and Damian Wayne are really quality characters, especially when they're in the same frame together, the same panel, whatever. And so I'm tickled pink.
Nice. I'm also like Tim. I watch every single DC animated movie, although I did not get a chance to watch the Super Pets film. I started it, but I have not finished it yet. But I watch every single one, and I also echo both these gentlemen's thoughts. I enjoyed quite a bit of Battle of the Super Sons, and specifically the CGI. I was very impressed by this moving away from the hand-drawn animation over to the CGI. And I always love the voice cast for all of these DC animated films. But this one in particular, Troy Baker as Batman, he's one of my favorite voice actors of all time. Travis Willingham is Superman, and Laura Bailey is Lois Lane. And they are, in real life, married, and I love it anytime they do projects together. I've seen them work on a number of things. They've worked on the Marvel stuff, Travis Willingham as Thor and Laura Bailey as Black Widow, and I love anytime they're in something together. So all those things. Nolan North as Jor-El, I love him and everything that he's in. And we even got the an appearance by a Shazam actor, Jack Dylan Grazer, as Superboy, Jonathan Kent. So I loved this movie overall, and I was very excited to talk to both of you two today about it. Let's get into, I think, the things that we enjoyed about the movie and the storyline of it in particular, because I think, Tim, you said the story was one that you really enjoyed. Was there something that kind of stood out to you, Frank, specifically when you were watching this film? And actually, what also is great about having both of you guys on, we are all pretty much relatively new dads on this podcast. I've noticed in my own life, movies, TV shows, comic books, things hit me a little bit differently now when they have a child in them. When they have some type of father-daughter, father-son relationship, things are very different now that I'm a father. So did you enjoy that aspect, Frank, of seeing the Superman as actually, you know what? There's so many thoughts in my head right now, but let me reel it in and focus it. Frank, you as a big Superman fan, what do you think about Jonathan Kent in general? So giving Superman a son.
I really, really love Jonathan. I'm a sucker for fathers and sons. To begin with, I'm a sucker for Jonathan Kent Sr. and Clark with their relationship. And in the last few years, as young Jonathan has been more of a staple in the comics, and now we've even seen him in live action television. As he's been established more and more as a character, I've really, really, really come to love his character. I love to see that side of Clark. As I've only been a dad for 4.5 months, but for the last couple of years, I've been sort of in the season of life where I'm thinking about parenthood more, right? As my friends like you guys become dads, and now I'm finally part of the club. But even the last couple of years, I've been more aware of it, thinking about it more, and it's really struck me more. But wow, now that I am a father, I've always loved Superman because he is an aspirational character. A lot of people love a character because they can relate to the character as the character is, and they feel like they see some of themselves in that character. And I like to think that's true for me with Superman, but really it's an aspirational thing of here's the best of us and what we can all strive to be more like. And to see Clark now as a dad adds a new dimension to that of getting to see the kind of dad that I want to be, and so it's really been awesome. This movie really bottled it up. They have a really difficult task. All these films do, of telling a lot of story in 80 minutes.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of ground to cover, and the ones that I have enjoyed the most, they always do such a good job with telling a well fleshed out story, fleshing out the characters in that relatively short time period, but really giving you a lot of bang for your buck, packing a punch with the emotional beats and the story moments the character moments that they bring to us. And I think this was a great example of that. I loved seeing that side of Clark, and this was a really nice, if you're only going to experience it in one place, this is a really good place to do it.
Yeah. And Tim, we've talked previously about Jonathan Kent in the comics now, currently, where they've aged him up a little bit, and he is Superman. They gave him the title of Superman while Kal-El Clark was out in space. So what do you think about them introducing him here into the animated world, the animated realm? Because we've seen him in the comics for so many years, but what do you think about this take on it?
I think it's smart to go back to him being 12. Personally, like, as much as I enjoy 18, 19, however old he's supposed to be, Jonathan Kent as Superman, I think that there's something really special about Jonathan at 12. There's this really special coming of age, almost in some ways Smallville-esque component to John,
right,
as he's like just about entering adolescence and high school, and the powers are developing, and then what to do with that kind of power. But so then, like, as a Smallville fan, like, or as a big Superman fan, and then like watching how Clark had to do that on his own, basically, watch it, like, how does somebody so like Clark get a different type of advantage? Like, how does he grow up in a slightly similar but different situation? And I think introducing him at 12 in a movie is a great starting point. And if they do continue in this little corner universe, the CG universe, like, I would like to see Jonathan stay like this age for a little bit longer. Like I said, as much as I like 18-year-old John, I think I prefer him as a 12-year-old. Just for the storytelling dynamic of it, because you already have older Superman like characters like Connor, and even Kara to an extent. And so I think John is more uniquely suited to being 12. So
yeah, and I really enjoy the Damian Jonathan relationship. In this one, they're kind of meeting for the first time, and I'm used to them just knowing each other and being best friends. And the Super Sons comic series that they had, and the current where they're currently at, like it's almost like like a Clark Bruce situation where it's like they have each other's back, they feel like they're best friends, and it was interesting to go back to this version of them where they're meeting for the first time, seeing Jonathan get his powers for the first time. That was all fun. That brought back some Smallville memories of Clark discovering his powers, which that just was my sweet spot. I was thinking about it the other day. I think when Smallville was coming out, I was getting back into comics a little bit because growing up, my dad, he always told me about comics, gave me comics, and dressed me in superhero outfits, gave me the toys and things like that. So I was always a big superhero fan. But when I got into my adolescent stage and then high school, it was like, oh, it's time to put away childish things. I won't be coming back here. But when the Tobey Maguire, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man came out, and then around the time Smallville, I think I locked back in, and I'm like, I'm never unlocking. Like I'm always going to be a superhero fan for till the end of my days. And so I was just kind of having a nostalgic moment the other day of thinking about those, especially the first, let's say 5 seasons of Smallville. It was like, you couldn't tell me that wasn't the best show on TV, that it wasn't the best version of Superman. And it was just, there was so much joy and actually meeting you guys, I think online around that time was just, there was so much joy in my life. So that period of time in my life is always going to be looked upon as a very golden moment in my history. So watching this and seeing this version of Jonathan, like I said, it just kind of brought back those memories and a lot of good times. So that was a plus. Now, Frank, I don't know if I've ever gotten your take on Damian before, just as a character of Batman's son. What do you think about Damian overall?
Damian, I was always such a Dick fan that Damian took a little bit to grow on me because they're obviously very, very different takes on the idea of Robin,
right?
The role of Robin. But over the years, much like Jonathan, Damian has really sort of carved out his place in Batman lore, right? And I've come to respect him as a character a lot more because I think I was always sort of comparing him to Dick Grayson, and you can't. They're very different characters. They wear the same title, but they serve different purposes. They're telling a different kind of story, and I've come to really appreciate the kinds of stories that are told with Damian. I've come to enjoy him in the comics. I've come to enjoy him in various animated incarnations. I would love a Damian centric film in this style. I would be down with that. I think it's I really, really enjoyed this incarnation of him.
Tim, what would you say to a Batman where they fast forward to the future and Damian's got the trench coat and it's the Batman 666, he has taken over. What if we saw that in CG animated? What would your thoughts be?
Oh, I would love that, actually. Because the adult Damian trench coat Batman has like shown up a bunch since Grant Morrison's run, however many years ago now, 15 years ago, 20 years, maybe 20 years. No, 15, I'll say 15.
We are old.
Those were coming out when we met online.
Yeah.
That trench coat came out when I was definitely in college. So I want to say 12 to 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But I would love that because I think that there's a tragedy to Damian that the other Robins don't exactly share. Maybe Jason Todd to an extent, but
different kind of tragedy.
It's a different kind of tragedy because it's like the tragedy happened and now it's recovery. Whereas Damian is always moving towards this fate that he has as the Batman 666, and like, is he going to sell his soul to the devil to go back and protect Gotham, and what does that look like? And there are different versions of it in comics over time, like the oh my gosh, what was the Future State era of DC books that they just put out? There was a Batman book that kept going, and that you kept continuing on, and like Damian, like Batman 666 was in that too, and like he keeps coming back, and so but what is never really touched upon is his relationship with Jonathan at that point with Batman 666. So I would love an animated film to tackle that. You know, like because let's say they're about the same age. Let's say, you know, like when that starts. So let's say if Jonathan doesn't age up earlier, what happens with adult Jonathan Superman and adult Damian Batman, and not the deceased versions of those characters, which is also great. But like, not, hey, Damian gets a happy ending, but Damian is a tragic hero. I would love that. I would love really to see that. I hope somebody listens to this.
Yeah.
Not, I will pitch it myself.
Yeah, that would be fantastic to see. In actually, even in hand drawn, I'd like to see that, just because I like their relationship. Because again, it's just a reinvention of what we all love together of the Batman Superman dynamic, and that is going to be until we're past our times, when we're gone, when we're in the great farmhouse in the sky, boys. We're still going to have Batman and Superman around. And so, yeah, it's interesting that it's that reinvention of that same type of dynamic, because we want to keep it fresh. We want to keep it new. But at the same time, we want to have our cake and eat it too. We want to still have the characters that we love. So this movie has two different dynamics going on. And it really is the Super Sons movie. But it does still have that original classic Batman Superman relationship, and then you've got the father-son relationship, and then you've got the son's relationship. So it's like there's this trinity almost of relationships, and I think it works on all of those levels. It's enjoyable, and it's fun to see how they play, all these characters play off of each other. And then as a father, as a dad, you know, from both sides of it, from the son's angle of, I want to live up to my dad. My dad is Superman. My dad is Batman. Like, these are the ideals that I want to live up to, and I don't want to let him down. And then from the flip side, I see my son in Jonathan or in Damian, and I'm proud of him. I want him to surpass me. I want him to be better than I am. And so this movie, I think, worked definitely on a personal level for me in all of those aspects. And I think we've said it. It was like Frank said from the beginning, it was just a fun movie, and I really enjoyed all of it. Every aspect of it was enjoyable. Was there anything that I think stood out for you fellas that you didn't like, Tim?
Oh, that's not where I thought you were going.
Oh.
Just put my finger back down.
Oh, well, where did you think we were going? I'd like to hear.
I thought you were going to say something that was really stellar that stood out to you, apart from those relationships, and I'll answer that before I answer something that didn't stand out to me, I guess.
Yes.
But before I do that, I got three things, because I want to forget the first one.
More.
We were talking about like doing an adult story of, you know, Damian and John. I would like that in a Dark Knight Returns style, please. And so, like, I would like to see that. Like, how does that type of story shift with these characters who are like their fathers, but not exactly enough like their fathers to retell the same story? That would be very interesting to me, because like you build up to that showdown the same way, but I feel like in some ways it's more tragic because they've been friends for a longer time.
Yeah.
You know, and like, is there really a showdown? Is there really like a turning point? Does Damian win? Does he turn over? Is he bad? Like, yeah, there's like really good storytelling potential there. I would love that. Okay, second thing, something that really stood out to me. I would say maybe 5 minutes into this movie, and I sat back and I said, "Oh, it's going to be one of those movies where I could just tell that every single sentence was setting up something for a good payoff by the end of the movie."
Yeah.
So, like when Jonathan's at the baseball game and he misses the ball, I'm like, well, that's coming back. Like that's like, and I just really appreciate the economy of storytelling that they did. Like there was not a waste. It wasn't just, oh, let's have Jonathan play t-ball or softball for a hot second. Like let's really bring that home, pun intended. Like all the way to the end, and like his dad misses the game, but then his dad was the game or whatever, like part of the game at the end. That really, like all of that just like worked so well for me that that's where I really thought the movie really shone. That and Lois running around the house at the exact replica of the Smallville house, mind you.
Yeah.
Smallville farm.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. I just loved her running around and Jonathan just being like, keys, purse. Just like that
was a great bit.
I loved.
Yeah.
Something that I didn't love, I guess, is that I personally was not taken with Damien right away. I don't know if that was the voice actor or just like Damien can be a hard sell when you first meet him because he is a jerk. I will
right
in here. He's just a jerk. But he's not a fun jerk. He's not like a Tony Stark jerk that like in real life would be awful, but on TV it's fun. Like even on TV, he's not very fun until you break away a particular layer. And I felt like it took a little too long to break that layer for me. And he was like, he ground my gears more than I would have, I guess what I would have liked, but I'm also used to a maybe more tempered Damien by now after years of reading him.
Right.
And so I just I had to backtrack to hit the original version of himself. And where that worked for Jonathan for me, like instead of older Jonathan, it took a little bit more effort for me on the Damien side.
Okay. Excellent. Frank, you can go the Tim route and be positive, or you can go the Vactor route and be negative. What stood out to you?
What stood out to me? I will say, Tim, I like your point about things coming back around. You guys familiar with Chekhov's gun? The idea that if there's a gun in the first act of the play, it has to go off by the third act of the play. Yeah. Chekhov's Kryptonite in this movie.
Totally.
Damien's like, oh, I almost brought out the you-know-what. And then, but lo and behold, there it is. Yeah. Literally, my first thought was, Chekhov's Kryptonite. Nice.
Can you call the episode that? Like,
there you go.
When we release this for Beer with
Beer with Geeks, yeah, for sure.
That has to be the title.
It is definitely Chekhov's Kryptonite. So I did enjoy that. I was not expecting a Starro story.
Good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a good thing. It has the potential to be a bad thing if done poorly. But it was just the right amount of sort of Silver Age sprinkle on top, to keep it fun and light, while telling this story about, I mean, the premise was sort of ridiculous, like the whole Starro premise is always ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it let them bring in Lex Luthor very naturally, right? A very organic way of him being like, I always told you there'd be an alien invasion, right?
Yeah.
Totally works on so many levels. And it totally works so that you can have the Justice League sort of be part of this story, but for it also to make sense for them to take a back seat because they're not really the Justice League right now, right? All that kind of stuff. It made it paved the way to be able to focus on the fathers and the sons as sort of the main attraction here. But I love that they still pulled in Lois and made her such an important part of it, because she is an integral part of anything that involves Clark and especially anything that involves Clark and their son. So I actually love the way that they use. I'm talking myself into loving this Starro thing. Basically, yeah.
It was kind of horrific the way that the Starro aliens would come out of people's mouths, and I was like, "Whoa, this is
just like unhinging the jaw and like the head going back." Like, yeah.
I wasn't expecting it to be not gruesome necessarily, but like it just like when that happened, I actually texted my friend Palmer from Academy Rewind and other things, but I texted him and I was like, "You're gonna like this movie." Like, that was cool. That was like. Was gross, and I loved it because I think Starro either works as a giant joke or this type of like body horror, like almost like alien bursting out of the stomach, like before it's like a full xenomorph.
Right.
That's what it gave. That's the kind of vibe that it gave me. Like with still being accessible to children. Of a certain age.
Of a certain age, yeah.
Which is what I also notice as a parent now, even though my daughter's only 1. Yeah. I'm still like, no.
Yeah.
This would have been bad.
Right.
Yeah, at a certain point.
But,
yeah.
Yeah, that was expertly said, my friends. So yeah, I think just positive all around for this film. I'll leave out the negative stuff, Tim. I won't be a Debbie Downer.
No, I want to hear the negative.
I want to hear this.
I don't have anything.
Is also the negative stuff.
No, I think it's this is, well, I would say the one. Well, no. I was gonna say the CG, but I think they did a really good job for their very first time on CG. And I was actually just watching. Going through some Pixar movies with my son. He loves cars. Like, that's his favorite thing in the world right now. So I've been going through a lot of Pixar stuff and looking at their evolution, especially if you go from Incredibles 1 to Incredibles 2, it's that thing. If you're not watching them back to back, if you're watching them as they came out, you're like, oh yeah, that's how I remembered the first one to look. That's how the second one looks. That's how the first one looked. And you go back and like, whoa, wait a minute. This looks like a Nintendo 64 game compared to a PlayStation 5 game today. So, yeah, it's, I thought the CG especially for their very first time out, was well done. Oh, you know what? I will say, here's my negative: not enough special features, because I would say the DC animated movies. Now, this is also, I just checked, the 49th DC animated film, and I have watched all of them with the exception of Super Pets, and I think
we count that one because it's not direct to video.
Yeah. I have watched them all. Yeah, Tim, that's good.
There you go.
I all of them have had great.
That's the only way that I'm like rationalizing that.
The special features have always been top notch, and I've always looked forward to. They'll have like a documentary about the characters that are involved or some type of ideas that are in the film, and then they'll have like a little voice acting thing. So I'm always intrigued by that. This one I think was a little light on the special features. That's my negative for this one. For Batman and Superman, Battle of the Super Sons, I wanted more special features.
I agree with your negative. I like the special features, and
that's
I
fair.
like the preview of the next movie that's coming.
Yes,
because we live in that. We've said this many times, but we live in the camp that if we stop watching these things, we live in the hunter camp of these things. Like, stop. I'm coming. Then they'll just stop making them. So I have to support everyone. But I like what's coming next. I watch that before I watch the feature. That's the way I roll. And I was disappointed.
There's actually 4 DC animated movies that are coming out next year. Legion of Superheroes, Batman, The Doom That Came to Gotham,
right?
Justice League times RWBY. Do we say that as?
It's an anime, I think.
Yeah,
that they're crossing over with. So I have zero interest in.
Yeah, I'll still watch. Ruby Weiss Blake Yang is the RWBY, but that as well as Justice League War World is coming out. So I will be watching every single one. You know what? I'm going to say it right now. I want you both on every single review for all 4 of those movies in 2023. I want the Beer with Geeks comic book kaiju crossover to continue. I don't want it to stop. So if you boys are free, if you're still able to, please join me for all of those. I would love to hear both of your thoughts, because I think both of you are well versed in the DC universe, and you're just two great guys. I think that is the main takeaway from this episode, is that Tim and Frank are great guys. And if you want more Tim and Frank, not only is this a crossover with Beer with Geeks, but you can go back and listen to every single episode, 9,999 episodes of Beer with Geeks. You can go back right now on Thought Bubble Audio and listen to and have a great time with the geeks, as well as Tim's wife, who subs in from time to time. I always enjoy listening to Beer with Geeks. It's one of those comfort podcasts for me. When I'm listening to it, I feel like you guys are there with me. I feel like we're all in the same room together. And while you're drinking your alcoholic beverages, I'm having my root beer, which I didn't have. I should have got it for today's episode, but I didn't bring it. But I very much enjoy Beer with Geeks, and I think you as a listener, you as a viewer, if you're watching this on YouTube, you will enjoy it as well. Tim and Frank, what you got coming up? I know you guys just talked about Wakanda Forever on Beer with Geeks. What you got coming up next?
This episode.
This episode, yes. We're in the middle of a long project to watch every superhero movie ever, going back to Superman 78. We've been working our way through
Batman 66, but we already did an episode on that. So
you're right.
So
we did an episode on that with you, Mr. Factor, many years ago on Gotham Podcast in its later incarnation, as a podcast about the TV show Gotham. I think we talked about Batman 66 with you and Hunter Camp.
Oh yes,
many moons ago.
Yeah,
that was probably the last time we all podcasted together.
Probably, yeah. I would say that's true. So yeah, we've been covering all of those. We're working through those bit by bit. We've got some holiday episodes coming up in the next few weeks as we're talking now. So yeah, there's fun stuff coming down the pipe at beerwithgeeks.com.
I cannot wait to see what's around the corner. Tim, what's going on in the Gannon household? Any fun things coming up?
In the Gannon household?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, actually, no. There's, I guess, getting a Christmas tree. That would be the fun.
There you go.
The fun thing, and it's all now. The conversation is like, well, do we take her, or do you take? She's only one. Like, she would love walking around a Christmas tree farm, though.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So
think of the content you could make. Just think about that. That's really what matters.
That's right. Like, yeah. Will I get good reels? That's what matters.
Yeah. I always enjoy Frank and Tim's social media outputs, especially your Instagram reels. So everyone check out those. I'll have them linked in the show notes for you as well. Check out the wonderful stylings of a Gannon and a Rambling. Fellas, I can't thank you enough for joining me on this episode. And like I said, please join me again for every single animated movie. I don't know why we haven't been doing this before. I should have thought about this a long time ago, but I'm correcting my wrong right now. I want you guys on every single episode that I talk about a DC animated film. I want the Brain Trust to join me. So.
Let me just check with my manager. She's 4 months old is the thing, so that's the problem. But yeah, let me check with her.
Excellent. I want to let everyone out there know that not only does Tim Gannon love comics, but Frank Rambling loves comics, and you should too. Yay! Woo!